And in this part of the world, where you have stories, poems and ballads, you usually find a harp. Ailie Robertson, we're here today in Wigtown, the literary and book capital of Scotland.
That's right.
Those poems and stories would originally have been accompanied by music, and the music would have been played on the instrument that you play.
That's right, the harp. One of the very first functions of the harp was as an accompanying instrument for ballads and for poems by bards. And so that was probably the earliest use of the harp in Scotland. The harp is Scotland's oldest instrument. We have evidence right back to the 8th century when there's carvings of harps in the Pictish stones can be found. So we know that right back then it was being used. And there was a time when really the harp was Scotland's national instrument. It was the most important instrument in Scottish history at a certain point in time.
The harpers, because they preferred to be known as harpers rather than harpists.
That's right.
And they were really, really well thought of in society.
That's right. Today the clarsach, which is the word for the folk harp, is thought of very much as part of the family of folk instruments, and it's used in sessions and in a lot of traditional music. But back then in the 12th, 13th, 14th century, it really wasn't thought of as a folk instrument at all, and that's because it wasn't played in all parts of society. It was really only the middle and upper classes that ever had the chance to play the harp, and it was an instrument that you had to be very well educated to play, and people who played were thought to be very intelligent and thought themselves a little superior to other instrumentalists.
I read one time that sometimes the clarsach was actually given away with the pedal harp, almost as a free incentive to buy the pedal harp, almost like a practice harp.
That's right, and still, you know, there is some snobbery that really the clarsach is just, it's for children, and you'll learn for a few years and then you'll graduate onto the pedal harp. And I play both, but I would certainly consider the clarsach to be my favourite of the two, and it's what I do the majority of my work on. And increasingly, more and more people are becoming professional clarsach players, which is great.
Here on especially the west coast of Scotland, there would have been, I suppose, a transfer of music back and forwards between the north of Ireland and the west coast of Scotland, and the harp music and tunes.
We're lucky that there's been a huge wealth of music has been shared, and particularly the music of Northern Ireland has very similar links with the music of the west of Scotland. There's so many tunes in common and versions in common, tune types in common. The Donegal Highlands are so similar to our Strathspeys that we have, for instance. So we're really fortunate that so much has been shared between the two countries. There's a huge amount of new music being written for the harp today, which is great. One of the tunes that I wrote is a tune called Swerving for Bunnies. And
Swerving for Bunnies?
It was written after an incident involving rabbit avoidance and a roadside ditch on tour.
And I take it you had to swerve for the roadside ditch to avoid the bunnies?
Yes, we landed up in a big ditch and had to get hauled out by a tractor, unfortunately, so I thought it deserved a tune.